Nkuli, thank you for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much to Childhood Cancer International and PsyOp for inviting me to be here and to speak to you today. This webinar is really special to me because I believe spaces like these change lives. And I know that because mine was changed by one. About 10 years ago, I came across a woman on Instagram named Mama Cax. Some of you may know her. She was an osteosarcoma survivor from Haiti, and she had lost her left leg to cancer, just like me. Back then, I had never really seen someone who looked like me living so boldly. She wasn't hiding her prosthetic, she wasn't apologizing for taking up space. And instead, she was modeling, traveling, speaking, laughing, and just living her best life. So I remember when I first came across her and thought, wait, we're allowed to do that? She never knew me, but she gave me permission to imagine a future that was bigger than survival. So there's one thing I hope comes from today's conversation is that someone listening leaves feeling the way I felt years ago, that life beyond childhood cancer can still be joyful, ambitious, meaningful, and beautiful. So, like Nkuli said, my story began when I was 12 years old. Of course, I didn't fully understand words like osteosarcoma or chemotherapy, and frankly, even the word cancer was still somewhat a puzzle. I just knew that one day I was running around with my friends at school, and after what seemed like a minor fall, my parents and the rest of the family were suddenly making decisions that would change my life forever. I underwent an above knee amputation and 3 rounds of chemotherapy. And when treatment ended, everyone celebrated because I was now in remission. But for me, it was just the beginning. I think people often think surviving cancer is crossing the finish line, but I think of it more like standing at the start of a completely different race. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to balance. I had to figure out why a leg that was now missing still hurt. And years later, I would learn that there was actually a name for it, phantom pain. I had to get used to people staring at me. And most of all, I had to figure out who I now was. I wasn't just healing from cancer, I was getting to know myself all over again. And going back to school was probably one of the hardest parts. I was really excited because I genuinely missed my friends, but I was also really, really terrified. I had missed months of school, and so academically, I had a lot of catching up to do. And socially, that felt even harder. I remember people staring at me everywhere I went. Some classmates didn't know what to say. Some teachers looked at me with so much pity that I didn't know what to do with that. I remember some people would come up to me in grocery stores and say things like, I'll pray that you recover soon or get well soon. And I would just smile, thinking to myself, well, I think I already did. I already recovered. um, it just felt like everyone saw my missing leg before they saw me. And for a while, I started seeing myself that way too. I became the girl who had cancer, the girl with one leg, the girl who survived. And while those things were true, they just were not the whole truth. Even at 12 years old, um, something inside me knew that there had to be more to my story than that. So I decided I wasn't going to let cancer write the ending for me. There were only 3 months left before my national exams when I returned to primary school that year. And I remember working harder than I ever had before. So I finished at the top of my class, went on to high school, continued working hard, graduated 4 years later as valedictorian, and then I applied to universities in the United States. And I remember opening my acceptance letter from Columbia University in March 2019. And for a little girl who had once wondered whether she'd ever fit back into school again, it just felt so unreal. Like Nkuli said, at Columbia, I majored in neuroscience. And some people ask me why neuroscience? And The answer is actually very simple. I simply was just curious. I wanted to know and understand the body that had carried me through so much. I wanted to understand why a seemingly ordinary injury had led to a cancer diagnosis, why chemotherapy made my hair fall out, and how a leg that was gone still ached in the middle of the night. So every lecture in college felt somewhat personal. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, learning stopped being about exams to some extent and became about understanding myself. And sometimes I like to joke that studying neuroscience felt like watching my favorite childhood movie again, but this time with the director's commentary. So everything had gone through was making a little more sense than previously. And while science answered so many of the questions I had carried since childhood, it didn't answer all of them. Every year, I kept hearing that another childhood friend from the oncology ward had died. Some of us had entered remission together, we'd celebrated together, we'd made plans together, and then little by little, there were fewer of us left. And I don't think we talk enough about survivor's guilt or about how lonely survivorship sometimes feel. And that experience stayed with me, that experience of just continuously losing friends and feeling like I was the only one remaining. So I realized I didn't just want to be a survivor or just to survive and thrive. I wanted survivors to have each other. And that's why I started Youth Against Cancer Zimbabwe. At first, we were all 16, simply just young people coming together to do good. But over time, it grew into something much bigger. We started supporting families, organizing survivorship workshops, just helping bridge gaps in cancer care in our country, and advocating for children who deserved not only treatment, but a future. Today, I work as a clinical researcher at the Yale School of Medicine. And interestingly, childhood cancer still shapes the way I see every patient I meet. Because survivorship taught me something medicine alone never could. And that's healing isn't only about scans being clear, it's also about confidence. It's about going back to school. It's about getting your first job. It's about learning to love your body again. It's about laughing without feeling guilty. It's about dreaming again. And that those things matter just as much. I also want to say something to survivors listening today. Sometimes people expect us to be inspiring and inspirational all the time, to be grateful, to always be smiling. But the truth is, some days are hard. Some days your body hurts. Some days you're just tired. Some days you miss the person you were before cancer. And if that's you, I want you to know you're not doing survivorship wrong. You're human, and it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for accommodations at school or at work. It's okay to say today is difficult. What I've learned is that strength isn't pretending that nothing happened or that everything is fine. Strength for me has been about owning the truth about what happened and choosing to keep moving forward anyway. And while we're talking about support and leaning on others, I would like to thank the people sitting beside every survivor everywhere in the world today. Parents, siblings, teachers, friends, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, social workers, organizations like Childhood Cancer International and PsyOp. I'm not here today because I never needed help. I'm standing here because so many people carried me until I was strong enough to carry others. And independence isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing that accepting help doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it's exactly what allows you to become strong. When I found Mama Cax all those years ago, she showed me what was possible. She showed me that I didn't have to spend the rest of my life trying to make people forget I had cancer. Instead, I could build a life so full of purpose that cancer became just one chapter, not the whole story. And today, I hope I've done the same for someone listening. Maybe there's a 12-year-old survivor wondering if they'll ever fit in school again. Maybe there's a young adult worrying they'll never find meaningful work. Maybe there's someone who still doesn't feel at home in their own body. If that's you, I want you to know this, that childhood cancer may shape the beginning of your story, but it does not get to write the ending. You do. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today.